Good afternoon. You've Accordia, agus Fáilte Rolls. You're very welcome to the Royal Irish Academy. Delighted to welcome you here for the launch of our new online exhibition, Waterford's Transported Convicted Women. It was developed in collaboration with Waterford's Transported Women, a Herstory, Grangegorman Histories, the Digital Repository of Ireland, and the Southeast Technological University Library, and also the Royal Irish Academy's IT team, particularly our webmaster, Laura. I'm Professor Daniel Carey. I'm president of the Royal Irish Academy, recently appointed. I'm the 59th president of the Royal Irish Academy. I want to do various different welcomes, but first of all, to start with the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Councillor Ray McAdam, who is going to be joining us shortly, to Her Excellency, Ms. Chantal Taylor, Australia's Ambassador to Ireland, and also to welcome our Executive Director, Lynn Scarf. When I was thinking about this exhibition, I was recalling Robert Hughes's fantastic book, The Fatal Shore. I don't know if people know it, Epic of Australia's Founding. It was published in 1987. I highly recommend it. These are women who were transported to Van Diemen's Land, or Tasmania. And this is what Robert Hughes tells us. He says, the English invasion of Van Diemen's Land was, by higher imperial standards, a muddled and squalid affair. It produced no set-piece battles, no benevolent occupation, no heroes, prophets, or cultural loot. It merely opened another pit within the Antipodean darkness, a small hole in the world about the size of Ireland, which would in due time swallow more than 65,000 men and women convicts, 4 out of every 10 people transported to Australia. We'll be hearing a little bit more about their stories today. Hughes tells us that kangaroos were plentiful in the bush of Van Diemen's Land, much more so than they had ever been around Sydney. Every able-bodied man who could use a gun went hunting for them, for kangaroo flesh, not bread, was the staff of life. Collins tried to keep the market under strict control. Hunters were obliged to sell the meat to the commissariat store. To convicts and others on the store, it was issued free. The usual ration was £8 a week. Something to contemplate. The development of this exhibition has been an excellent project in terms of showcasing the collaboration between multiple research programs and departments in the RIA, including communications, Digital Repository of Ireland, Grangegorman Histories, and IT. And it's an honor to be able to showcase this work here today by launching this exhibition, which offers a unique opportunity to present the stories, as I've said, of women transported from Waterford to Tasmania via Grangegorman. Their experiences have often been overlooked in historical narratives. Our speakers this afternoon will give us a brief insight into the various aspects of the project from a Royal Irish Academy perspective. Representatives from Waterford's Transported Convict Women, a Herstory, will develop a walkthrough of our digital exhibition, and Dr. Joan Kavanagh will give an insight into the connections between Australia and Ireland through the history of transported convict women that were held and transported from Grangegorman. Her research into these women was important for this digital exhibition and the Beyond the Walls exhibition, which is opening in the autumn and will be situated in the new academic hub, formerly the site of St. Brendan's North House. So without further ado, I invite Lynn Scarf, our Executive Director of the Royal Irish Academy, to say a few words. Lynn.
Very well, Dan. So my role today is just to follow up from Dan to welcome you all to the Royal Irish Academy this afternoon. It's a huge honour for us to have you here, and welcome, Ambassador. One of the things that struck me about this, and when my colleagues contacted me, they just asked me if I would give a bit of context to the work. One of the exciting aspects of this project in terms of the Academy is that it's bringing together the work of a number of areas of the Royal Irish Academy. So 2 of our research programmes, the Digital Repository of Ireland and Grangegorman Histories, have been involved in this project, but also our IT department here has been involved through the incredible work of Maura. And in many ways, so many different other members across the Academy have been involved. The other piece that I was reflecting on as I looked at the dates and times and the beautiful bonnets in the room inside was that this time period when these women were making this journey, this forced journey to Australia, was roughly about the same time that this Academy was being established. And so not here in this building, but down in College Green, there were many people thinking and beginning the process of creating what this is here today. And I think there is a special note to make about the fact that many, many years later, we're talking about these women and their lives experiences in the context of the Academy and Academy House. And in many respects, that reflects what it is that we always try to do in the Academy, which is bring together great thinkers, great expertise from all aspects of our society to share their knowledge, to share their research, to share their experience. And that's one of the things I think that both Grangegorman Histories in particular, but also the Digital Repository of Ireland do so well. They both create platforms that are by their very nature embedded into communities, and through that work invite people in to work with us in the Academy. And that is a very special thing for us as staff and as research programs. And it's wonderful to have an opportunity to mark that today. So I'm going to invite Lisa Griffith up next, who's going to say a few words from the Digital Repository of Ireland. So Lisa Griffith, Director of Digital Repository. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much, Lynn. I'm just going to explain very briefly who DRI are in case you haven't come across us yet. So the Digital Repository of Ireland is digital infrastructure for Ireland's culture, heritage, humanities and social science collections and data. And what we specialise in doing is providing long-term preservation for born digital and digitised materials. And we provide access and make these collections and data freely accessible through our repository, as well as safeguarding it for the future. So making sure that the digital content remains accessible well into the future. Digital preservation is the ongoing process of maintaining digital material to ensure its accessibility. So we do this by keeping multiple digital copies, checking file formats and monitoring redundancy, as well as introducing important infrastructural elements like PIDs or digital links. That means you can continue to access the material. So we archive material like pamphlets, maps, books, photographs and websites, as well as raw research data. And we do this to make sure people can not only access this material for their own curiosity, but also to allow researchers to reuse data. And it's really important that we're helping to support data reuse. It's good value. It's protecting the investment that the Irish government makes in research data. And it's cutting down on work for future researchers. So at DRI, we have 63 member organisations, and they include SETU, and we're really proud to work with SETU. But we also aim to work with community groups as much as possible because they have digital material that can be particularly at risk. And I'd like to say special thanks to Kieran Cronin from SETU, who has made the bridge that kind of facilitated this project by bringing together the work of community groups, preserving it through SETU's membership of DRI, and working to bring these collections forward. This is a very special collection, and I say that being a very proud Waterford woman. And when I look at this collection and I stand here today as director of the Digital Repository of Ireland, it really marks for me what centuries have done for Irish women and makes me think about what my life would be in Waterford in the 19th century and the kinds of challenges that I may have faced. When you look through the collection, you can really appreciate the day-to-day challenges that Waterford women and Irish women had in their lives and what they did to survive. So it does feel very personal, but it's a beautiful collection and one that I think everybody can relate to in some way. I think what Maura has done, and in creating this exhibition, there's really been a beautiful bridge built between the 19th century and the 21st century that allows us to explore that. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's worked on the collection.
Thank you, Lisa, and for everything that DRI is doing to preserve the social and cultural heritage of Ireland and its data. I want to take this opportunity to extend a very warm welcome to Ibrahim Al-Hatmi and Nasser Al-Rashdi, who are delegates from the National Records and Archives Authority of Oman, and they're visiting the Digital Repository of Ireland today as part of a professional visit to Ireland. I also want to welcome Mary Doyle, who's chair of Grangegorman Histories Working Group, and also Philip Cohen, the previous chair of that group. And I'm going to invite now Ruth Hegarty, who's the director of Grangegorman Histories, to say a few words and to introduce Dr. Joan Kavanagh. Ruth.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here and to see all the collaborative threads that are coming through. I'm the director of Grangegorman Histories for the Academy, but actually the project itself is a partnership of all of these organisations with local communities at the core of it. So this is really special today that it's a Waterford community that is the driving engine of this project. And the first time I came across Christina Henry's Bonnet project was through the Grangegorman Development Agency, who are the other lead organisation for Grangegorman Histories, which is a public history project, because they funded some of Christina's Henry's work there. And I heard tales of thousands of bonnets wandering around in Grangegorman at the former penitentiary there. And I've always been interested to see them in person, so it's an amazing joy today to see them in person. The Grangegorman Histories project has not just been focused on the history of Grangegorman, its penitentiary, its asylum, and its workhouse history, along with the history of today. It's also looking nationally at these institutional histories, these histories that are linked, interlinked, and can be explored in ways that's very valuable if you take a national approach to it. So we're currently thinking about how Grangegorman Histories can take what it's learned over the last 6 years of its existence to explore whether there are nodes around the country that might like to take what Grangegorman History has learned, marry it what they know already and the work that's already going on there, to explore whether we can create a national framework which would assist each of these places to explore their histories, including this history of transportation. And we think that might be a powerful way for Grangegorman Histories to develop in the future. Grangegorman Histories up until now has been funded by the Grangegorman Development Agency and the Royal Irish Academy, but also by all of the other partners. And we're extremely grateful to Dublin City Council and to the Lord Mayor for the funding that you've given to the project, because it's been extraordinary how each of these partners has brought not just the funding that they gave initially, but then every time that they see an opportunity like this to amplify what's being done, they've taken it. And we're very grateful for that. And then just to flag, as Dan mentioned, everybody will be able to see these bonnets in person because Waterford have agreed to loan some for our exhibition. The Grangegorman Histories exhibition of Beyond the Walls, which will be on from September in the Academic Hub building, which is a beautiful building at the centre of the TU Dublin and wider Grangegorman campus. So you'll be able to come into this great big airy space, and on the right-hand side, you'll see some historical panels. You'll also see artifacts from our partners, the National Archives and the Royal College of Physicians, but there's also almost custom made for bonnets, a series of cabinets, and in there will be stories of these Waterford women who were transported. And I must say, we were proofing the very simple, very bare details that are given for each of these bonnets. And I was so glad when I completed the proofing of it, because every time you read their details, which might be as simple as their age, when they were transported, and what crime, stealing a cloak or something like that, that they had committed and the reason that they were transported, it was very moving. So I hope that these bonnets will enjoy their sojourn at Grangegorman. But the expert on this is Dr. Joan Kavanagh, who's going to speak to us now. She has had a very small grant from Grangegorman to explore the transportation from Grangegorman, but today she's going to talk to us about that history. I'd like to call up Dr. Joan Kavanagh now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I always get worried when anybody says I'm an expert, because I always feel there's going to be somebody else in the audience who knows much more than me. So thank you for inviting me to speak here today on a topic that is very, very close to my heart, and one that I'm very passionate about, and interested to hear you talk about reading the little biographies of the women. And I can tell you the project that myself and my Tasmanian friend and colleague, Dr. Diane Snowden, who I believe is watching online, some of them. Hi, Diane. That we're compiling a database of over 3,800 women who were held in Grangegorman, and putting it into a database with spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets of 40 odd columns, and you really get to see the lives of all of these women, and some of them are just heartbreaking. So I'm glad to see I wasn't the only one who is moved by the details. So what I want to do today is briefly give an overview or a history of convict transportation from Ireland to Australia, a history that has shaped two nations, and to shine a particular light on a place that has been largely overlooked in the popular imagination, Grangegorman Penitentiary, which served as a crucial staging post in the transportation of Irish women to Van Diemen's Land. To understand Grangegorman, we must first understand the broader system within which it operates. Convict transportation was a cornerstone of British penal policy from the 17th century onwards. The idea was simple in its brutality. Rather than hanging petty criminals or filling domestic jails to overflowing, the state would exile them to the colonies, where their labour could be put to use, building the infrastructure of empire. It was the authorities thinking locally and acting globally. Transportation to North America has been practiced since the 1600s, with the American Revolution of 1776 abruptly closed that avenue 200 years ago this year. Prisons and the notorious prison hulks became dangerously overcrowded. The solution that emerged was the Antipodes. In 1788, the first fleet arrived at Botany Bay, and the great transportation experiment to Australia began. Between 1788 and 1868, when transportation ceased to Western Australia, approximately 162,000 convicts were transported to Australia from Britain and Ireland. Of these, some 40,000, or roughly a quarter, were Irish. It reflects the profound social and political disruption that characterised Ireland in this period, a country gripped by poverty, agrarian unrest, sectarian tension, and ultimately the catastrophe of the Great Famine. Irish convicts were not a monolithic group. They included rural labourers convicted of agrarian crimes and political prisoners, rebels from 1798 rebellion, the Young Irelanders of 1848, and the Fenian movement of the 1860s. And they included the vast majority, ordinary men and women whose crime was poverty, who stole to eat, to clothe their children, to feed their children, and theirs was the criminality of survival. Women constituted roughly 1 in 7 of all transported convicts, approximately 25,000 of all convicts sent to Australia from Britain and Ireland. The female convict experience has often been distorted by Victorian moralising. Contemporary observers and later historians, influenced by them, tended to depict transported women as dissolute, immoral, and irredeemable. The pioneering work of historians such as Deborah Oxley and Joy de Mussy has done much to correct this caricature. In reality, transported women were convicted of non-violent property crimes in general, such as theft, receiving stolen goods. These were the desperate crimes of the destitute. Many were mothers. Most were simply poor. As former President of Ireland, Mary McAleese, has stated, the circumstances which led to their arrests, conviction and transportation tell of lives ground down by poverty. The journey these women faced was extraordinary in its ordeal. First, conviction at assizes or quarter sessions, with confinement in local county jails. Then transfer to Dublin, to Grangegorman. Then the voyage, typically 3 to 4 months by sailing ship around the Cape of Good Hope to Hobart town. It is at the Dublin stage of this journey that Grangegorman Female Convict Depot assumes its historical significance. Grangegorman today is the site of a new major university campus, Technological University Dublin. But from the late 18th century, this area was known as the Institutional Quarter, with a workhouse, an asylum, and a prison. From 1836, the prison became the first all-female prison in Britain and Ireland. A section within the prison was set aside to hold female convicts from across the country, whilst awaiting transportation. The decision to centralise the management of female offenders in Dublin reflected a growing recognition that women should be incarcerated separately from men under female officers. Grangegorman brought a degree of system and routine to the process. The regime at Grangegorman was managed by a matron and a staff of female warders. The thinking behind the experiment was that the women should spend 3 months in the depot, gaining skills that would make them more employable once in the colony. Records were compiled. The convict registers that survive today in the National Archives of Ireland and in the Tasmanian Archives are among the most remarkable genealogical sources in existence. They record name, age, county of origin, religion, occupation, physical description, offence, and a brief character assessment. For tens of thousands of Irish Australians today, these registers represent for their most direct link to their ancestral homeland. From Grangegorman, the women were conveyed under police and military guard to the North Wall, where they boarded steamers for Kingstown. The vessels used for female convict transportation were not purpose-built prison ships, but converted merchant vessels. They were often cramped, dark, and frequently unsanitary. Yet the mortality rate on the convict ships from Ireland was relatively low, which was a testament in part to the improvement in medical supervision that had taken place over the years from following the shocking death rates of the early transportation era. However, it should be remembered that the convicts were a valuable commodity. They were a human cargo, and they had to be looked after, and they had to, as many as possible, had to arrive in good health. Between 1840 and 1853, the year transportation to Van Diemen's Land ceased. approximately 3,500 female convicts arrived in Van Diemen's Land. The vast majority were assigned as domestic servants to the homes of free settlers, where they worked as cooks, laundresses, nursemaids, housemaids. Assignment was theoretically a form of rehabilitation through labour, but in practice it could mean anything from relatively comfortable domestic service to brutal exploitation. Those who could not be assigned or who reoffended were sent to the female factory at Cascades in Hobart. The factory was a world within a world, a place where women laundered, wove cloth, carded wool, nursed their infants, gave birth, and were punished. Most women, however, served their time, received their ticket of leave, and eventually their certificate of freedom. Many married. The colony was chronically short of women, and demand for wives among emancipist men and free settlers alike was high. Many prospered. Their descendants today include judges, politicians, farmers, teachers, nurses, and ordinary working Australians of every description. The Irish convict women are embedded in the Australian story at its very foundation. In both Ireland and Australia, the memory of convict transportation has undergone a profound transformation over the past century. In Australia, for generations, convict ancestry was a source of shame, something to be hidden, denied, quietly buried. This began to change in the latter decades of the 20th century as genealogical research became more accessible and attitudes shifted. Convictism, as Babette Smith saw it, was the nub of the nation's history. Who were the convicts? Today, convict ancestry is often worn as a badge of pride, a link to the country's founding generation, to people who survived extraordinary hardship and built something enduring. In Ireland, recognition has been slower. The convict women of Grangegorman and the county jails were not celebrated figures. They were poor women, women without power or voice. But through the painstaking work of historians, archivists, and genealogists on both sides of the world, their stories are being recovered. Female Convict Centre in Tasmania and the work done by the National Archives with the Irish Convicts to Transport to Australia project, and indeed Grangegorman Histories, are endeavours slowly restoring to us women who were robbed not only of their freedom and their homeland, but of their history. When we read these convict registers, such as Ruth was talking about, we are reading about the lives of real human beings. We owe it to them to read carefully and to remember. Waterford's Transported Women, a Herstory exhibition, is going a long way to remember the convicts transported from that county. It's a wonderful expression of remembrance, and it is a way of bringing these women to life, to remember them and to connect with their legacies, their descendants. 35 of these women now have a prominent place in a memorial, which will, I hope, spur other people to delve into the history of their convict ancestry. I commend the work of Kieran and Anne and the wonderful women from Waterford who have been working tirelessly to promote and highlight their fellow Wicklow women. Sorry, I said Wicklow. I'm from Wicklow. I always get Wicklow. I'm one-track mind. The Waterford women. Apologies. Congratulations on a wonderful and fitting exhibition. And I look forward to studying the bonnets more carefully later on. One convict included in the Waterford project is a Wicklow convict. See how I snuck her in. And I really should have gone on. These are just some photos within of Grangegorman itself and then within the building. One convict is Eliza Davis. Eliza was raised in the Dublin Foundling Hospital and was apprenticed in 1841 as a servant girl to a family in South County Wicklow. In 1845, aged 19, she gave birth to a son whose father was most likely a fellow servant. The infant was found dead and Eliza was charged with infanticide. Found guilty, she was sentenced to death, but due to community advocacy identifying the mitigating circumstances of her epilepsy, her sentence was commuted to transportation for life. Removed to Grangegorman female convict depot to await transportation, Eliza sailed aboard the Tasmania 2, arriving in Hobart in December 1845. She formed a relationship with Joseph Roebuck, an English convict with whom she had 3 children. Joseph suffered from epilepsy as well, and his mental health deteriorated. By 1856, Eliza was the main provider for the family, and Joseph was committed to the New Norfolk Asylum, where he remained until his death in 1873. Eliza then formed a new relationship with another English convict, Amos Eastwood, with whom she had 6 children. Amos worked as a wheelwright, and Eliza became known as a midwife. She and Amos only married on the 12th of October 1898, just 1 week before her own death on the 19th of October. She was aged 69. Eliza is but one case study of many thousands, which reveals the complexity of convict experiences and which exemplifies there is much more to a convict life than a crime, a trial, and a sentence. Her transformation from a desperate young woman in Ireland who committed infanticide to a respected midwife and mother of 9 children is thankfully recorded in the Irish and Tasmanian records. Her descendants now span Australia and New Zealand. As one of her descendants, Beverly Gallaty, has said, Eliza is the jewel in the crown of my family history research. The story of Irish convictism is one of poverty, punishment, and survival, of loss of security of known relationships, of children left behind and children taken away on landing in Hobart. Ultimately, it is a story of extraordinary resilience. Grangegorman Female Convict Depot stands at the heart of that story as a pioneering institution. It was in many ways the threshold between the old world that they knew and the new world they would soon encounter. Today, Grangegorman is being reborn, a campus of learning, rising on ground, layered with history. It is entirely fitting that a place of knowledge should stand there now, because knowledge, the recovery of memory, the telling of hidden stories, the refusal to let the dispossessed be forgotten a second time is precisely what we owe to those women who passed through its gates. They went, they endured, and in enduring, they became part of something larger than what had befallen them. Let us honour their memory, not with sentiment, but with the hard work of remembrance. And just that is Eliza Davis with her second husband, Amos, and especially for Diane, who's watching, that is for great-great-grandfather, William Butler. His mother, Margaret Butler, was transported in 1845 on the Tasmania along with Eliza Davis. And Margaret Butler never saw William again. He was taken from her when they landed in Hobart. And then the legacy, the descendants, they are some of the descendants of Eliza Davis and Margaret Butler, and Diane is the one holding the little baby. So, Gormina Machagaf.
Thank you so much, Joan, for that fantastic talk. It was really superb. A very powerful account of what you call the criminality of survival. We very much look forward to the opening of the Beyond the Walls exhibition later this year, and I'm pleased to welcome Kieran Cronin and Anne Fitzgerald to provide an insight into the digital exhibition and what people can expect to see and hear as part of it. To introduce them, Kieran is Special Collections Heritage and Outreach Librarian at SETU, the Southeastern Technological University. A qualified librarian and archivist with over 20 years of professional experience, he is the chair of Waterford's Transported Convict Women Herstory. Anne is a historian, researcher, community education facilitator, a director of Women's Collective Ireland, and the founding member and current secretary of Waterford's Transported Convict Women Herstory. So Kieran and Anne.
Good afternoon. I always like to light a little piece of candle when I do these talks, and it's like inviting these women into the room, the spirit of these women. Bring in the candle. So it's a great honour to stand here today in the beautiful setting of the Royal Irish Academy, representing our small but deeply committed group from Waterford. They're all sitting down there in the third row. Ruth and Eleanor and Margaret, Jennifer and Aisling, and Kieran, of course, is our chairperson. We call our little group Waterford's Transported Convict Women a Herstory, a community of volunteers brought together by a shared purpose to honour the hidden history of transported convict women. We actually got together about 2.5 years ago and sat in a room, and we had this beautiful collection of bonnets being made by groups in Waterford. And we were saying, you know, we have to do something a little bit more. We have to look at our options. And we sat down in a room, and it was either, bring it a little bit further. So we came up. So since then, we have had great success, and even, and it's a great pleasure it's a great honour for convict women to be, for their story to be told in an environment like this. The lives of these women have been overlooked and largely absent from the history books. Their journeys from Waterford to Australia is not simply part of our shared past. They are part of a living legacy that continues to connect people, families, and nations today. One of the most meaningful aspects of our work has been making contact with the descendants. Hello, Heather, and Mary, and Luna, and all of them that's watching us here today. I know I'm Les. And our collaboration with Dr. Christina Henry and the Rose from the Heart lies at the heart of our work. We are profoundly grateful to Christina for her vision, which continues to guide and inspire us. Our group name reflects our commitment to building on that vision while honouring the powerful bonnet making tradition. Through this work, we are creating an organised, ethical, respectful way of remembering convict women and sharing their stories, ensuring they are preserved and carried forward through a national digital infrastructure. As we gather here with distinguished guests, including Councillor Ray McAdam, Lord Mayor of Dublin, and the Australian Ambassador, Chantal Taylor, we profoundly acknowledge and celebrate the enduring ties between Ireland and Australia, bonds forged through stories of hardship, survival, courage, and hope. May those connections continue to grow and deepen between our two nations. Among our proudest achievements was the groundbreaking launch in 2024 of our Roses from the Heart Bonnet Preservation Project on the DRI, developed in partnership with Southeast Technological University. This was made possible by our chairman, Kieran Cronin, and Kieran has played a vital role in fostering an extraordinary collaboration between our group, SETU Library, and the Digital Republic of Ireland. So he's brought all those together. What unites us all is a simple but powerful belief that these women matter. What we are doing in Waterford is something new. It is a pioneering, long-term initiative of preserving and sharing history. We are not only looking back, we are building something that can endure into the future. We can share this way of working with other groups, as people spoke about today, if they wish to explore the history of their convict women from their communities. At times, it feels that those women themselves are guiding this work, as though in some way they are with us. Through this journey, I have made a personal discovery within my own family history. A convict woman, I believe, is my third great grandaunt, Eleanor Fitzgerald. I was doing some research for some American students that were coming, and I discovered this Eleanor Fitzgerald, and I have a very big ancestry family tree, and it seems to me that this Eleanor Fitzgerald, everything points to this Eleanor Fitzgerald being my great grandaunt. And she stole a piece of muslin with her two cousins, and one of them was Mary Fitzgerald, and she was only 16. And the three of them were convicted on the same day, transported on the same day, and lived together for the rest of their lives in the colonies. And Mary was married 3 times, and I've written up their story, and it's an amazing story. For me, making Eleanor's bonnet and telling her story means she is remembered as more than a convict. Her name, her humanity, and her story have been restored to the family and community from which she came. Once again, she is spoken about and remembered in the small rural village she once called home. So I look forward to having Eleanor's bonnet photographed and preserved on the DRI. Now, after many years, the Waterford women have, in a sense, found their way home. Through our work, their names are once again restored to the families and communities from which they came. Sorry. Not easy standing up here when you're... This work in many ways is long overdue, and we are opening a door to stories that came close to being lost, a door to connection across time, across distance, and across generations. And in doing so, we say to those women, you are not lost, you are not forgotten, you are home. Thank you. So Kieran Cronin, the chairperson of our group, will now give a short presentation on what to expect and what to expect to see on the website. And I'm going to hand you over to Kieran now.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, everyone. Lord Mayor Dublin, Australian Ambassador to Ireland, dignitaries, guests. As Anne said, we're so honoured to be here today to share the stories of Waterford's. Some of the stories of Waterford's transported convict women. It's interesting, Ruth, you mentioned about the bonnets roaming around Grangegorman. I was there on that fateful day, I think in 2017, and it was raining and it rained. I'm delighted to see today that it's the sun is shining, and it's another wonderful chapter in our in the the rejuvenation and the remembrance of Waterford transported women. This photo was just from the launch of our exhibition back in SETU, and we were also honoured to have the Australian ambassador to Ireland, His Honour, His Excellence Gary Gray, back in 2024. So I just wanted to share that picture. So what to expect when you come to our exhibition? I think you're going to be hugely impressed, and we hope excited by the amazing stories that have been captured and recorded over the last number of years, building on the work of Roses from the Heart and the ongoing work of Waterford's Transported Convict Women, a Herstory. And the key point to the group name is Herstory. It's moving away from his story, history. We don't even think about it. It's history, but in reality, it's his story. And what we're trying to do is make it a concerted effort to address this imbalance in the telling of histories, and in the recording of history, and showing even the fact what is recorded, what's ignored, why it's recorded, why it may be ignored. So our online exhibition will form part of the wider Grangegorman Histories Beyond the Wall project. It brings together stories of 35 Waterford women who passed through the Grangegorman Female Penitentiary between 1840 and 1852 before their exile and transportation to penal colonies in Australia. These women's lives were shaped by that experience, and their voices have largely been forgotten in Irish history. This exhibition explores those histories through archival records, digital research, creative interpretation, and the voices of their descendants today. As you navigate your way through this story-driven exhibition hub, you will encounter a collection of stories, memories, and perspectives from the women, their descendants, the bonnet makers that connect the past with the present, promoting reflection, dialogue, and a deeper engagement with our shared history. Between 1788 and 1853, approximately 380 women from Waterford area were sentenced to transportation to Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania, and New South Wales. This exhibition honoured the lives of 35 women from the Waterford area through text, audio, and imagery. As we've heard, Grangegorman was more than just a location. It served as a central holding point and a final place of residence in Ireland for these women before their transportation to Australia. While sentences ranged from 7 years to life, the reality was that most, if not any, would ever return. The Roses from the Heart project, created by Tasmanian artist Dr. Christina Henry, is a pioneering memorial dedicated to remembering transported convict women. Using a cloth bonnet inspired by an original 1860s servant design, the project commemorates the 25,566 women who were sentenced to transportation from Ireland and the United Kingdom to Australia between 1788 and 1853. The simple calico form symbolises the lived reality of these women and the domestic labour that shaped their daily lives. Each bonnet has been handcrafted to contain the woman's name, the ship they were transported on, and the year of transportation. The bonnet makers used their personal experiences and vision to embellish the bonnet in remembrance of the woman. A selection of bonnets which will form part of the wider exhibition at the new Academic Hub and Library in the TU Dublin Grangegorman campus are on display here in the Royal Irish Academy today. The bonnets were professionally photographed using best practice standards to ensure that each bonnet is digitally recorded in a consistent manner. And the Roses from the Heart project and the bonnets that were created are augmented by the historical primary research undertaken on each woman by our members, including Anne Fitzgerald and Eleanor Murphy, with the support of descendants. And now Aisling as well, Aisling Gordon, who is part of the historical research. These connections with descendants allow us to give light on the lives these women lived in their homeland. The testimonials from bonnet makers are central to being able to give an insight into the craft and the thought process that goes into making these bonnets. They're beautiful artwork. They are, we believe, a fitting tribute to the memories of the women that were transported. And if you can remember, these women would never have been given the opportunity to wear such ornate or embellished head bonnets. So the majority would have lived lives of poverty. And we're most honoured and grateful for the support of the Digital Repository of Ireland and being able to share the bonnets and the associated research with the wider world. And I will talk a little bit more about that later. So the stories of the Waterford women, rather than trying to take in all 35 stories at once, I'm going to primarily focus on Bridget Scanlon's lens. And by following Bridget's journey from Waterford through Grangegorman and onwards to Van Diemen land, we can begin to see how this exhibition connects past, place and memory in a much more personal way. Bridget Scanlon was a young woman from Waterford, born around 1827, who was convicted of arson in 1849 alongside Bridget Dooling and Mary Crowley, who are also listed here on the slides. All three were found guilty and sentenced to 15 years transportation. Their crime? Arson, burning down of a derelict house. For that, they received this 15 years transportation, and they were all indicted and found guilty on the same day, on the 30th of March 1849. They were first held in Grangegorman Women's Penitentiary in Dublin and departed together from Dublin port on the 26th of June 1849 on the ship called Australasia. Their crime must be understood in the context of the Great Famine, which was ravaging and tearing Ireland as a country apart at this time. When some women committed offences out of desperation or in hope that transformation might offer a better chance of survival. In Australia, Bridget showed signs of resilience to the harsh conditions, receiving punishment such as hard labour. Despite this, she later formed a relationship, settled in Tasmania, and had at least 8 children, dying in 1895. Her story, like those of Bridget Dooling and Mary Crowley, reflects both hardship and resilience. So this is an example of what the records look like on the Digital Repository of Ireland. And we're proud to have this ongoing collaboration between SETU Library, the Waterford Transported Convict Women of Herstory, and the DRI. This repository ensures that the records are digitally preserved for future generations and made accessible to audience around the world for the first time. And the key parts to this is the fact that each of the bonnets were professionally captured using defined standards. The primary research that has been collated in relation to each of the women's stories. We've also been able to embed the bonnet maker's testimonial, and we've used rich metadata descriptions based on Dublin core to be able to give a fuller sense of the person and what the term and the digital memory that's been created of them. Also, a key point in relation to this is the digital object identifier, the DOI link, the permanent link, the link that will ensure that these women and their stories will never be forgotten again, because they'll always be a record in our national repository. So, in this one unique event we came across in our research, and which is contained in the exhibition, relates to the fact that 5 Waterford women, Mary Murphy, Bridget Scanlon, Bridget Dooling, Mary Crowley and Honora Moore, were all admitted into Grangegorman on the same day, and their records are contained in the Grangegorman prison register. They were not alone. They would ultimately be joined by 5 other Waterford women: Mary Costello, Mary Bryan, Bridget Costello, Judith Farrell and Alice Malloy. And together they were travelled to Australia, to Tasmania aboard the ship Australasia on the 26th of June 1849. The Australasia carried around 200 women and 40 children on a journey that lasted nearly 4 months. Their journey would have been harsh and sometimes overcrowded conditions. but the fact that 10 Waterford women sailed together on the same day gives a real insight into that one moment and what it must have been like for having so many women from Waterford in Grangegorman at the same time. One of the most powerful and deeply affirming aspects of work has been the connections formed with the Australian descendants and transported Waterford women. These family links have transformed historical records into living stories. I'd now like to call on Anne to read the testimonial of Heather Mortimer, great-great-granddaughter of Bridget Scanlon.
And just to start by, Heather was the first descendant to contact us, Heather Mortimer, and she made this bonnet. It's an old tablecloth belonging to her grandmother, and she sent it all the way to us in Ireland. As female descendants of those two incredible Irish women, we find it almost impossible to comprehend the layers of pain and suffering they have experienced. Having grown up with a strong family ties and a deep love of our country, the thought of being banished to the other side of the world and losing contact, possibly forever, with our loved ones and homeland is inconceivable. How traumatic and heart-wrenching. We ponder, does our DNA carry traces of our ancestors' pain and trauma? Is there a healing process involved as we uncover and share their stories? We think so.
So I'd now like to play for you a recital by Heather Mortimer herself. This bonnet you'll see on the podium is for Bridget Scanlon, and that was also made by Heather. And Heather is the great-great-granddaughter of Bridget Scanlon, and the poem is titled A Bonnet for Bridget.
Little Bridget Scanlon, dark hair and freckled face, I have made you a bonnet trimmed with a wee bit of lace. As I sewed your name upon it, I thought of you with tears, my Irish great-great-grandmother who suffered all those years. When I read your convict record, I saw myself in you, a feisty little rebel who didn't like to be told what to do. And garrulous and quarrelsome can be said about me too. Little Bridget Scanlon, I'm glad I have your genes, for I am strong and brave. I've had my share of women's pain and shed a lot of tears, but I have survived just like you, my Irish great-great-grandmother who suffered all those years. Little Bridget Scanlon.
So I'd now like to play for you a short excerpt from a testimonial of Mary van der Veen. Mary was the great-great-granddaughter of Bridget Dooling. And Mary provided us with a fascinating biography for Bridget, which is now hosted on the Digital Repository of Ireland. The wonderful thing about the DRI repository means it allows us to be able to augment and continue to enhance the records we have by keeping them in the one space, and the links you'll see in the exhibition are accessible for to go and find out further information. And this is a short excerpt from the full testimonial.
I first came across the project in about not 2015 or 16 when I went up to Ballarat with a friend to look at an exhibition of bonnets. I knew I had a 2 times great-grandmother who'd been a convict, but I didn't know whether she had a bonnet, and I didn't know how I could find out. Time went on, and on Facebook there were some people discussing roses from the heart, and there was somebody who said that they had a relative who was on the Australasia whose name was Bridget Scanlon. Was that the Bridget Scanlon who had been convicted with Bridget Dooling in Waterford? And the answer came back that it was. I'd found a descendant of one of the women who'd been convicted with my Bridget. In discussion with Heather, I found that there was a group in Waterford that was doing work researching these convicts, and I contacted Anne. The women in Waterford were interested in a biography of Bridget. I'd done some work. I knew where her children had been born, and I knew what date she'd been incarcerated in the jail. But to finish the work off, I thought, because these women had done bonnets, that I should find out what happened in the 10 years that were missing from Bridget's record. These were the 10 years in which her 5 babies had been born.
You'll have to go onto the website to find out the rest of the story. But it is amazing, and I would highly recommend also reading the bio that Mary has prepared for her ancestor, Bridget Dooling. This exhibition would not be possible would it hadn't be for the descendants and their ongoing support for the work we do. As I said, I've just given a brief walk through the lens of Bridget Scanlon for this talk today, but we're also honoured to have testimonials from Cathy Salonga and Alison Ward, sisters based in Perth, who discussed their fourth great grandmother Anne Anderson, who was transported from Waterford in 1821, and Luna Johnson, who reflects on her husband's ancestor, Julia Wilson, offering another family perspective. It also would not be possible without the amazing and unwavering work and vision of Dr. Christina Henry, the founder and conceiver of the Roses from the Heart project, a friend and an inspiration for the work that we do. And I'd now like to play a short excerpt from Christina's testimonial, which is also available on the website.
Hello, my name is Christina Henry. For those of you who are not aware, I began to use christening bonnets as a symbolism of the hundreds of babies born to female convicts at the Cascades Female Factory in Hobart, Tasmania. Following this, I commenced the Roses from the Heart Memorial project, dedicated to shining a light on women transported to Australia between 1788 and 1853. The reach of this project has become global, making it difficult to condense within a short video. Nevertheless, I will do my best to summarise in relation to the Grangegorman connection. My initial interest in Grangegorman, Dublin, took hold early on whilst at the Cascades Female Factory historic site in Hobart during my time there as the honorary artist in residence. And like Grangegorman, where the physical footprint is imposing, these days the Cascades Female Factory historic site comprises of very little existing structure. The story is kept alive mainly through public engagement, incorporating narrative, art and historical research. In 2003, I began an undertaking of acknowledging female convicts and their babies using a simple cloth bonnet. The pattern comes from original bonnets worn by servants and babies in the early 1800s. I titled this public art, Roses from the Heart. An Irish woman is often culturally referred to as an Irish rose, and many participants who stitch a bonnet have a family connection to a convict lass, and their honouring of their ancestor is meaningful and definitely from the heart.
Christina will testimony gives a huge amount of research and reflection on her work in the project, and again I would highly recommend giving a listen to that in your own time. But this project is all about community, and it is really important and pertinent that I get the opportunity to salute and highlight the amazing work of each of the bonnet makers. And our bonnet making community comes from a diverse community of makers, including individuals and community groups at local, national and international level, all of whom have contributed their time, skill and care to the International Memorial Roses from the Heart project. Participants have brought their own histories, identities and reflections to the creative process, highlighting universal themes of remembrance, displacements, resilience and social justice. Bonnet making groups include Ruth Murray's Creative Hearts, Waterford Women's Centre, the Ferrybank Women's Shed Bonnet Project, sewing groups in California and New Norfolk, Tasmania. And to finish my section, I just would like to conclude with a short testimonial from Valerie Lappin-Ganley, a California documentary maker raised in a Jewish family with deep roots in Waterford. In fact, her great-grandparents, Fanny Diemen and Jacob Lappin, had their wedding in 1894, and it was the first Jewish wedding ever held in Waterford. In this short excerpt, Valerie speaks about the bonnet she created for Bridget Holmes and why she chose the design for the project.
I'm very honored that the bonnet I made for Bridget Holmes is included in the Grangegorman Histories exhibition. Bridget Holmes was convicted for larceny for stealing 4 hens. She had a previous conviction for stealing turnips. Her husband was a prisoner on Spike Island in County Cork. Bridget was sentenced to 7 years transportation. After she received her certificate of freedom, she married again and had 9 children. I embroidered 4 hens and 2 turnips on the bonnet. There are 9 buttons, 1 for each child. The black buttons are for the 5 sons who each died at a young age. When I make bonnets, I also think of the First Nations people of Australia who were displaced or killed by the colonialists. They suffer to this day. The same thing happened in America. When I make bonnets, I think about the families who were torn apart, about the psychological damage never to be repaired. I think of the migrants of today who are experiencing the same kind of trauma.
I'd like to just hand you back over to Anne to conclude our section, please.
Just a few little thank yous, and we would like to acknowledge and with sincere gratitude and invaluable support, guidance and contributions of our distinguished guests. Ray McAdam, Lord Mayor of Dublin, Chantel Taylor, Australian Ambassador of Ireland, and thank you for attending today. I probably leave out half the names, so please forgive me. Grangegorman, a team was got together as part of organising that, and these are the people on that team. Catherine Martin, Project Manager of Grangegorman, and Ruth Hegarty, Managing Director. That's Grangegorman Histories. Royal Irish Academy, Karen Power, thank you, Karen. Maura, don't ask me to pronounce your second name. Oh, there you are. Thank you for your brilliant work on the whole IT, the website, and we were always ringing her, can you edit this and put this in? And Lynn Scariff, Executive Director, and Francesco, I haven't seen him today, is he here? On the DRI, Emer, Hadro, I can't really pronounce the name, and Lisa Griffith, Director, thank you. Our own group and support, a special thanks to Dr. Christina Henry for your inspiration, encouragement, collaboration through Roses from the Heart. All the library staff, and I know some of you are here today, of Wadding Library, SETU Waterford, for your valuable support, guidance, and we're often seen there going in and out. Joan Cavanagh, thank you so much for your fantastic talk today and giving such a clear insight into the whole story. The bonnet makers near and far, whose dedication and creativity and passion continue to honour and keep those stories alive. And to all those who support us through their generous donations. Pat McInerney and Kirsty O'Keefe, whose outstanding photography has ensured that each bonnet is preserved in remarkable detail. So please forgive me if I forget anybody. So now my little job here, my last little job is to introduce Shirley. I'm delighted to introduce Shirley O'Shea, a teacher, a writer, and a poet. I first met Shirley when she wrote and read one of her beautiful poems at an event in Waterford. I was deeply moved by her words and asked her if she would write a poem for our Convict Women project. So thank you, Shirley, for coming all the way here today, especially to share your beautiful poem, Taken Women.
Thank you, Anne. I would like to dedicate this poem to Anne and her group and to my own 3 daughters. Taken women. I wonder what they saw as they looked back over the stern of the Phoebe Dunbar as the ship conveyed them 11,000 miles away from home. The convict girls taken from Waterford city and county, offenders, mothers, mistresses, daughters, thievers and givers of food cloaks and blankets, swapping petticoats and shawls for a life behind bars and a colony. Culprits adjudged and condemned to Spike Island or Grangegorman. Vagabond girls subjected to earn their own living in felony, serving time till their freedom papers and tickets of leave. Risk takers, lawbreakers, no pardons or pleas. Mary Moon, deported, 1834. The widow Mary stole a kerchief and her child was taken from her. A convict dressmaker traded in Van Diemen's Island in Tasmania. Hard labor and toil, nor her crude tongue couldn't tame her. The mischievous vixen escaped many times as a deep poverty mania drove her forth in her anger and grief, better than the penalty of death, but no less, not worth the mantilla or the price she paid, too steep in waters deep. Ellen Lenihan, deported, 1842. Like Mary, Ellen had an eye for the style and fancied a petticoat that cost her more than the penny she would have paid for it. And a shawl to go with it, pretty slippers, 10 more months was made pay, with no conditional or absolute pardon. The shoes she required for a night on the town, and she did not drown on her journey from Kingstown or Queenstown to Hobart Female Penitentiary and a life of continued brutality. Margaret Daly, deported, 1847. This girl was 21 years, illiterate and abandoned, stole a cloak and so exiled on the boat from Grangegorman. Her convict trade to be made toil and scrub as a housemaid. A freckled girl with a gap in her smile all the while. Her 7 children did not survive or were orphaned. 7, the number unlucky for Margaret of Dungarvan. Her hemiplegic body paralyzed by the loss and the grief. 37, the number of years in her life. Bridget Crotty, deported, 1849. The Lismore girl stole 3 geese from Potwelsh, Portlaw, made an outlaw of her and her friend Judith, sent first to Grangegorman workhouse to await her passage. Yet a quiet girl like Bridget understood the message, and good behaviour cut short her servitude with her modest attitude. And the flesh of the geese never made it to her belly, from Ballyduff to the rough seas, going under to the hell of a colony. Judith Farrell, deported, 1849. Of Lismore and a friend of Miss Crotty, the geese stealer, she sailed down to hard labour without favour from healing herself from the dysentery on the boat of transportation. Frequented disorderly houses and stations where she took up with a fellow, a drunken braggart boaster. Her black tale of woe ends with her rape and her murder. No absence permitted or sanctitude or saviour. She couldn't escape from his fervour and venture. Bridget Brine, deported, 1852. Miss Brine stole a hen at the height of the famine to sustain starving children, 7 years transportation. Transformed to a penal servant girl, dark-haired and blue-eyed. Her boy, John Brine, age 4, by her side, was taken into the orphanage on arrival the pain of survival, bereft Bridget heartbroken, caught drunk and absconding, one of 9,000 women repentant remanding, the women of Waterford and Van Diemen's Landing. What did they see when they glanced back over the stern? They saw Ireland to where they would never return.
Thank you so much, Shirley. This is a profound project that is very clear from the presentations made today, from the testimonials by people who have made these bonnets and from those who are recovering their family histories. That's a remarkable achievement and a remarkable gift. So I really want to thank all of those involved. To thank you for your generosity of spirit, for the energy and intellectual engagement you brought to this. This collaboration is a wonderful testimony of the kinds of things that can be achieved through collective effort. So thank you again today. Remains for me just to thank everyone for being here, and then to invite everyone to come to our front rooms and to have a look at the bonnets on display that represent the Waterford convict women transported to Australia. Thank you very much.